Before I begin this review, let me just say this. I apologize for having another departure again. It is the month of November and I haven't reviewed a movie since like October 20th. It's because I've been very busy with life. School has been really hammering me down and finals are coming up soon, so it's been not really stressful but incredibly overwhelming. And I'm very happy to be back here again, and let's get on with today's review. Today's movie will be dedicated for Veterans Day tomorrow on November 11th, and since tomorrow is the 100th anniversary of Veterans Day, especially with how the armistice called back in World War I think it's appropriate for me to review a movie that really does respect the veterans, and it's one more movie that is really not easy for people to watch because of the amount of graphic violence and reality of how war was like for veterans and for soldiers. So for today, this is a movie that will be a little tough to review, but it's a movie that people just need to watch, and if they can't watch it, I don't blame them because this movie is not for everyone. Saving Private Ryan is a 1998 war film directed by Steven Spielberg, and it stars Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, Tom Sizemore, and Edward Burns. And this movie is about World War II. It takes place within the era of D-Day in 1944, and it features an American captain named John Miller. He is sent on a mission to save one soldier named James Francis Ryan due to his brothers being killed in combat, and he has to find him in order to send him home while the rest of the American soldiers keep on fighting in the war. And throughout this mission, he gets 7 other people, or 8, including himself, in order to find this man named James Francis Ryan in order to bring him home. And as they go through the battlefields of France during World War II, it is incredibly intense and very disgusting and super tragic, and that's what this film is trying to explore. As the film progresses with these soldiers that are trying to find James Ryan, they eventually have to face so many challenges in the battlefield of France, and it also begins to ask this question about how does it feel to, risk your life in order to save one other life, because he has to go home to be with his family. And it's one of the toughest questions that this film has, and that's the reason why Saving Private Ryan is such a challenging film to even talk about, because it just explores war in a very brutal, realistic, and graphic way. From the moment I saw this movie, I was super shocked that Spielberg would make a movie like this, because the way that Spielberg made this movie made me not feel like I was watching a movie. I actually felt like I was watching a real-life tragedy happen on screen, and that is due to Spielberg's excellent direction of realism, because this movie uses so much realism. There's not so much effects or CGI because everything is almost practical, and especially the way how they directed battle scenes, especially the interpretation of D-Day, which was one of the most intense and horrifying war scenes in cinema history, and just the way how it's directed, it just really blows me away. Spielberg really went all for it, and I can tell that he put so much effort, and he even did so much, history, research on the American history of what these soldiers went through, and especially what these actors had to do for military training to get into their roles. From the way that Spielberg used practical effects in terms of, the sound of gunfire and the usage of tanks and sound of explosions, he really wants to put the audience into the sense of a real-life soldier in a battlefield. And he's trying to explore the horrors of war and tragedy, and this film just grips the audience psychologically because it's trying to, make people very uncomfortable about, why war is so terrible. And that's what Spielberg's intent was also, because war is such a devastating thing. And once you just see these people who are in service, it's just, you just want to pay their respect because they're doing everything to protect our nation. And I believe Saving Private Ryan is a metaphor for people who are serving in the military, no matter which branch that they are, and what they have to go through in order to just protect us as a nation. Also, based on the way that this movie was filmed, it's really strange calling Saving Private Ryan a Spielberg film, if I'm being completely honest, because this movie really does not feel like a Spielberg film. Spielberg is very well known for movies like Indiana Jones, E.T., Jurassic Park, Jaws, and I know he even stated back in 1985 when he made The Color Purple that he wanted to do drama, and he does justice with drama because when you watch this movie, you kind of forget you're watching a Spielberg movie. You know, you don't see any of those things that Spielberg uses, that is a part of his style. But when he uses like a realistic style, that's when the Spielberg style is enhanced for realism. And actually, another thing I would like to say is that Saving Private Ryan does not feel like a Spielberg film. For my opinion, this movie feels like a Paul Greengrass film. If you know what I mean, this movie is filmed kind of like a documentary, kind of like, the Bourne trilogy, with especially with Paul Greengrass, with the way how he directed Bourne Supremacy and Bourne Ultimatum. The way that Greengrass directs his movie, especially when he collaborated with Matt Damon for the Bourne Supremacy and the Bourne Ultimatum, there is a less usage of effects, especially CGI, and more practical and realistic effects. And in my opinion, I think that's what Paul Greengrass used as an inspiration to make the Bourne movies, and especially with his other movies like Green Zone and Captain Phillips, in terms of like political realism. And I just think, in my opinion, I think this is Saving Private Ryan is a movie that really inspired Paul Greengrass to make those movies, especially since Matt Damon is in this movie, and of course he eventually plays Jason Bourne. And it's kind of ironic how Matt Damon is in Saving Private Ryan with the usage of handheld cam, making it film like a documentary, and then later he's in the Bourne movies with Paul Greengrass, shaky cam, realistic documentary, and if you know what I mean. And also because of the way that this movie is filmed, this movie feels like it's way ahead of its time. It doesn't feel like a film from 1998, but it felt like it came out in 2007, kind of like in the same era with the Bourne Ultimatum. And of course, all the actors shine in this movie. Tom Hanks did an amazing job as playing Captain John Miller, as the conflicted American captain who just doesn't know what to do, especially when he wants to like really find Private Ryan in order to bring him home. And Matt Damon was great, and I think this was also what propped him up for the Bourne movies, and everyone else does amazing in the roles. Edward Burns was awesome, but the thing that I found out that Saving Private Ryan did was that it's trying to portray how people relate or how they view war psychologically and physically. It's honestly heartbreaking with the way how the film portrayed people in war, because it's trying to illustrate people that who are in the service, that they're just people that just want to do good for their country, but whenever they're in this conflict between nations, they have to view it in a way of how they have to be tough with themselves, and even how scary it is, they have to stand up and stay together in order to like be within this moment, even despite how tragic and traumatizing it is for them. Because that's honestly the main purpose of Saving Private Ryan, is how do people view war when they're in the battlefield. Sure, it's very tough, it's super hard, and it's very tragic, but whenever you're in this conflict, you have to look out for one another. And it's basically, as I said, it's a metaphor for veterans and how they wish that they could, be with each other, and how to like save another life even if your life is in risk. After everything I have said, I believe I am now going to conclude this movie review, because this is honestly a tough movie to talk about and to explain, just because of how traumatizing and graphic this movie is. Because this movie, like, if you're very sensitive to violence or brutality, I highly do not recommend Saving Private Ryan for you, because this movie is very, very traumatizing. But as the film does portray war in a very tragic way, I have to say that Saving Private Ryan is one of those rare movies that does capture the realism of war and tragedy, and it pays so much respect to the veterans who are serving out there or who have served in the past, because veterans in the United States, they honestly deserve our respect and support, because they're out there, they're defending our country, they want us to be safe from all the dangers that we are facing. And that's a thing that I have so much respect for, our veterans, and they deserve to be saluted. And that's my salute over there for all of the American veterans who are watching this movie review out there. And because of this, I have to give Saving Private Ryan a 10 out of 10. And I'd love to apologize again for the lack of content I have been creating on YouTube, because I've been absent once again because of so much schoolwork and so many exams, and since it's the month of November already, finals are coming up soon in a month, and that is not enough time. But I'm very proud of myself that I came back and I made this movie review for all the veterans out there for Veterans Day, and I'd love to wish a happy Veterans Day for everybody who is watching right now. Thank you very much, guys.